welcome to FPTV and welcome to FPTV with new releases with one of our favorite authors, Rick Remender. How are you, mate?
I'm great. Well, it's weird. I mean, yeah, the world is falling apart, and I got a fascist in the White House, and the West Coast is on fire, and there's a pandemic that's ravaging. So, like, you know, relatively to, I guess, great. We have these conversations almost every day now, and my wife has come to the conclusion that we should just start asking each other, "How are you doing right now?" Because it's a little bit easier to go, "At the moment, nothing is on fire, and I feel safe."
I know it's an amazing cornucopia of bad news every day that goes from bad to worse, you know. And man,
yeah, I always say reading the news is going. I have to, like, it's like I'm going to go into Chernobyl. I have to get my hazmat suit on and get prepared for it. I have to have the exact amount of coffee so that I can get myself just through the process of seeing what's happening.
Yeah, that is exactly what it's like. It takes a lot of, I think, looking at watching the political situation takes as much emotional and intellectual fortitude as actually living through the pandemic. It's really quite amazing, mate. I know we could talk about that for a solid half an hour, so let's talk about something much more upbeat and pleasant. You got an awesome new book coming out from Image, you're publishing with Image, The Scumbag. You can link to pre-orders for that book from this interview if you're watching at home. But what can you tell us about The Scumbag, mate?
It's the kind of thing that I really enjoy writing. I did a book when I first got into comic books. I wanted to do sort of absurdist humor, and I liked the idea of mixing humor with things that were sort of less than expected. One of them was a book I did called Captain Dingleberry, with a superhero who had a dimensional vortex in his butt where he sent bad guys. And the other one was a skate punk named Blackheart Billy who had a robot head. And anyway, it was just sort of like absurdist humor in the vein of like Monty Python or Mr. Show, and you know, listening to Frank Zappa albums and smoking weed and just trying to like enjoy making art and have fun with it. And it wasn't until I started doing things like Fear Agent and Strange Girl that my work as a writer really took off, and that was a little more, you know, drama. There's humor in both of those titles for sure. I ended up doing more drama, and it wasn't until I ended up at Marvel and I wrote Deadpool and sort of reconnected with the stuff that I had been doing earlier when I first got into comic books, which, you know, looking at like Dan Klaus's Needle Dick the Bug Fucker, or you know, what Evan Dorkin was doing, and you know, like when Robert Crumb and Robert Williams and the Zap crew would go off the rails and have fun. I really wanted to do those kinds of comic books, and so Deadpool was a success, and I helped breathe new life into that character. And you know, they ended up basing the second movie on the story I wrote.
Yeah, right on.
But it never occurred to me that I may be okay, good at that, and I should do more, until a couple years ago when I wrote down the log line or the tagline, you know, the fate of the world is in the hands of the worst person on it. And I don't know what inspired that. Maybe an election.
I wonder what it could have been, mate. I don't know.
Weird. I can't remember off the top of my head, because things have been pretty cool. Things have been pretty cool. So, so I started developing, and then I just started thinking about, like, you know, well, what if you gave the super soldier serum to, you know, a fentanyl addict with no ethics? Yeah. And then I started developing, you know, this idea. We're in this very polarized world, and I came up with, you know, in the book, the central organization that keeps peace is called Central Authority, and they're trying to, you know, they're trying to keep a centrist reality together. And then there's all these extremist organizations that are terrorists, and I built that out to be sort of like the old 007 Spectre, where, you know, you've got all these various bad guys, and it's a little heightened, but it's still trying to say something about the world. And in the middle of it all, we've got this dirtbag Ernie Ray Clementine, who is now been accidentally given a super soldier serum, a one of a kind, you know, power, And he's an apathetic, apolitical, non-voting sort of rock and roller who just wants to do cocaine and listen to Judas Priest.
Yeah.
And he's that that he was you were a music journalist. He's that dying ilk of, he's the guy who was working on a primer gray Camaro on blocks, listening to Iron Maiden. Like, they don't make them. They're not. They just went away.
Yeah.
Like, it was a breed of guy that was totally around when
It's
for
an
a while.
absolute type. Yeah, for sure.
They're gone. And so he's that guy, and he's forced. And I like the part of it. I always try to find something that I can sink my teeth into beyond just the fun. And that part of it is you take, it's there's an obvious metaphor there. You take the apathetic, apolitical non-voter and give them the power to change the world.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of one of the themes running through it. But, obviously throughout, it's me very much leaning into just absurdity and trying to enjoy myself as I write. And
Yeah, that it sounds fantastic. And who you're working on the art side, is the idea that you'll have a rotating series of artists working with you, or is it going to be, an art team that you're going to lock down and work with for the whole book?
Well, what's interesting is I've never been I have a list, and, one of the main reasons I work so hard is that I just love seeing art come in, and I just love working with artists and trying to collaborate to get them excited about visuals and to tell a great story that they want to translate. And then to see those pages come in, there's just no greater thrill. I did it for free when I was an animator and when I was a storyboard artist, and made comics for a decade without making a nickel on them. It's very addictive. It's a ton of fun. And so I have this huge list of artists I want to work with, and I figured that the Scumbag gives me an opportunity to work with all of them and to go down the list of all of the people I may or may never get a chance to work with, and to do single issues with each one of them. And some of them I've worked with before, like Wes Craig and Roland Boschi, and some of them I haven't, in terms of like Louis LaRosa and Andrew Robinson and Eric Powell, and got issues by Ben Gall, and coming up. So it's some people I've worked with, and it's other people that I haven't, but it's been a tremendous amount of fun because I can write 4 or 5 issues at a time, and then clean them up and interstitch them, and put Easter eggs in this issue that pay out in this issue, and do all that kind of foundational work. But then I can see all these pages just start flooding in as 5 different artists are working on these different chapters, and they're all so varied and different. And then I've got my longtime collaborator Moreno Dionisio, who I worked with on Black Science, and he is coloring it all to sort of unify and add that, as well as having my long-term letterer Russ Wooten letter the thing.
So you've got the through line with the lettering and the colouring, and then you've got the joy of working with these different art. Is it literally issue by issue, mate?
Every issue we change artists.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
And I've got the first 11 issues planned out, and artists on each one. I've got the first 6 issues written. The first 5 issues are done. And so and then I'm also working on some other very cool things with the thing. It's interesting, and I never can express this with enough passion to really sell it as much as I want to. But the Scumbag is one of these projects like Deadly Class was. I was Fear Agent had blown up, and people wanted more sci-fi from me. And I was developing Low and Black Science. And they were going to be my big hits at the time, and obviously working with amazing artists, but I wanted something that was just completely for me, and not that those weren't, but Deadly Class was that. And it's weird that Deadly Class then finds this whole new audience and blows up in the bookstores, and I get to go show her on a TV show, and all these things happen. And it was never anticipated. It was just a side project that was like, here I'm just going to go do whatever I want and talk about my punk rock youth and drug abuse and all of these depression, and it blows up because of that weird recipe. And so the Scumbag is much the same. I was working on the Scumbag while I've been finishing off, 7 to Eternity and Death or Glory and Low and these other books. And it was another one that was like just entirely for me. And we got the orders back, and it was like 70,000 copies on the first issue or something.
Yeah.
And that's by far the biggest opening I've ever had. And it's really interesting that when you chase your own weird passions and you just do what you want 100% with no mind towards marketability or audience or pandering, how you can really be incredibly pleasantly surprised by the response.
I think that's a great message. I mean, it reminds me of many things on the music front, many things on the movie and TV front as well. It's kind of like to pull in something that's very English. It's like Monty Python. They never thought that it was going to blow up in the States in the way that it did, because it's so Anglo-centric, right? All the reference points are really British, but without messing around with it or trying to curve it to another audience in any way, it blew up for them. And I'm hearing you talk about your own career and all those great projects that you've created. That's absolutely. I mean, I've really enjoyed your Marvel work, but my favourites out of the things you've done are your Rick Remender standalone projects that are pure you. And I think as a fan, kind of that's what gives the best expression to your talent. I really enjoyed your run on Captain America, which is a tough gig, by the way, because coming in after Brubaker's run must have been spectacularly difficult. But I love the fact that you did something else with it. Sorry, mate.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. We've got a little lag from the fact that we're talking on other sides of the planet.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a nerve-wracking job, and Ed is one of the guys that I respect most in the industry, and in terms of writers in general. Ed's a wonderful person and a wonderful writer, and he had done such a terrific job on it that that I almost turned it down, and I almost didn't want to do it. And then I remembered that when Jack Kirby took over the book, and again, it's Jack Kirby, and it's his character. He took it over, and he wanted to do something new and unique and original. And he took the Zola and the stuff, and made all these crazy bioweapon characters.
Yes, right on.
He went off the reserve. He just went insane with imagination.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, he got beaten up to the point where, there's all these legendary stories where Stan was printing only the bad mail because Stan wanted to teach him that he couldn't do it without him.
Yeah.
I don't know if that part's true, but there was enough
story.
in there. It's a great, whether or not it's true, there was a lot of bad mail, and Jack got beaten up.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if Jack Kirby can get the shit kicked out of him for doing a Captain America story that's a science fiction tale and it's weird, I want to cook up a weird science fiction tale. And I want to use those characters that Jack created in that run, and sometimes are considered like third rate.
Yeah.
And I want to see if I can't make them real big, and expand on what Jack did, and take that same risk.
Yeah.
And the people who loved it, they really loved it. So it's the same thing. You follow your bliss, and it seems to connect with people.
No, I think that's absolutely, that was certainly my experience. I mean, I couldn't have loved the Brubaker run more. I always loved Captain America, but I really love it because I was introduced to comic books by my grandfather, who fought in World War II with an American unit, right? So he came back with a load of comic books. He loved comic books, and he loved Captain America. And with regard to that specific character, the Brubaker run's incredible and comes off years and years of the character being mishandled. So what I really respected about what you did is exactly what you've referenced, which is I thought your storyline was so wild, and also brought in that, I mean, when you read that whole Mad Bomb era Jack Kirby Captain America, it's insane. It's nuts. It doesn't even really make any narrative sense most of the time. It's this, but every page is packed with an idea. But Kirby, it always seemed to me when he wasn't edited, he had so many ideas coming out of his mind. It's like throwing out the Black Racer in New Gods when there's a bunch of other stuff going on. He just couldn't stop himself. And I thought, I thought yours was the perfect expression, perfect remix of all of that DNA. And it took a lot of guts to do it, mate, I think. So in as much as any creative endeavor, you could use that use that term, guts to talk about it. But I thought it was great. And from the pages I've seen on the Scumbag, what I really like about what I've been seeing is the energy to it all.
It has a big energy. It is at its core a spy story, and the world is in danger. And Ernie Ray Clementine, Agent Scumbag, has a super soldier serum with a wrinkle, and that wrinkle is his powers are only activated when he is behaving nobly, or he is acting under noble motivation.
Yeah.
So one of the fun things is to come up with these scenarios, and you put them in life or death situations. And you've got this guy who has never had a noble motivation in his life. And you then have to force him, in order to survive or save the world, to figure one out.
Yeah.
And, it's fun as a writer because, the limitations in that particular puzzle change every single time I throw them in a situation. And so that first arc that I've just gotten the final pages from Wes Craig from, I think that it's a lot of fun. It's drawn by some of the best guys in the world, and I think that the energy is apparent. It's a very fast moving comic book.
Yeah. I can't wait to dig into it on a monthly basis. And finally, before we go, mate, are there any particular spy series that were meaningful to you, or whether serious or humorous, that you yourself enjoyed, that do you reference anything have you got any touchstones that you're thinking about when you're writing the Scumbag?
Yeah, I mean, it always comes back to just being a kid who was raised in the 70s and watching those Sean Connery 007 movies.
Yeah.
And I could reference, other books and films and television shows, but the one that I did a series at Marvel that was also inspired by my love of that stuff, called it was The Winter Soldier, The Bitter March.
Yeah, right.
And it's
Yeah.
I think it's like, for me, for whatever the mileage you get out of it, I think it's the best thing I wrote at Marvel.
It's a great book, mate.
We all have different, you eventually have a couple things in your career where you go, I'm very proud of that. And
yeah.
The Bitter March is the thing I'm probably most proud of that I did there. And it let me sink into that classic Sean Connery 007 world. And only in this case, I get to do it where, this guy also, Ernie Ray Clementine has that same reference. It's men's magazines from the 70s,
yeah.
and Sean Connery.
Yeah.
And of course, the world has changed quite a bit. So all of the things that he thinks that he's emulating that are cool, that Sean Connery did, they're not so cool anymore. So Ernie doesn't, he doesn't quite fit in today's world. And so it was fun. I rewatched Thunderball and From Russia with Love and a couple of others. And
yeah.
And just sort of soaked in those kind of spy tales.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a brilliant touchstone to have. I mean, Thunderball is when it all starts to go particularly batshit crazy. I mean, reality starts being a very distant thing from Thunderball onwards, because that opens with the jetpack, doesn't it? If I remember correctly, Thunderball.
Yeah.
So yeah,
jetpack one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, they go bonkers. And I watched. I made it up to Moonraker.
Yeah.
With
Roger Moore.
Boy, that's by the time you get to Moonraker, the whole endeavor has it's
yeah, because
literally.
Yeah. Because you get to Moonraker via The Spy Who Loved Me, which is about as over the top as it gets, right? I mean, Moonraker, it's completely left any semblance of even making any sense, miles away. But yeah, I mean, you're in a very rich seam of kind of camp and over the top mid-70s insanity by the time you get to that point.
Which I leaned into, and there's so much of that in here, and I realized that, like, I just love it. I just don't. This is suspension of disbelief, and all of these things. That's why I wanted to tell a story where nobody could say, "Well, there's a plot hole," or "I didn't quite understand this." I go, "Well, fuck off! It's whatever it is. doesn't matter. You know, like it's fun, it's well drawn, it's funny. It's like, you know, at the end of the day, I remember there's a scene in, I think it's Moonraker, and forgive me if I'm botching this, where there's a centrifuge test, and Roger Moore goes in and he climbs in, and they're going to test him, and of course the person doing the test is told to leave, and then it's turned up from like 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, and he's just going like, whoa! I was like, man, this guy is a terrible super spy to get into that situation. Like, why is this guy doing that? And you know, eventually before he dies, he manages to the escape at the last minute. And I was like, there's something beautiful about that kind of storytelling. It's like the $6 Million Man when I was a
Oh
kid.
man,
It's just,
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
asinine and it's fun and it's camp and it's ridiculous. And if you like that kind of stuff, there's definitely a lot of it in the Scumbag.
Fantastic, mate. I mean, I couldn't think of a better, a greater, and more sterling endorsement than that. So you have been watching FPTV new releases with the awesome Rick Remender talking about his great new book, The Scumbag, issue 1, artist by Lewis Reuter. It looks amazing. Thanks so much for joining us today, mate. It's really been great chatting to you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Andrew.
Take care, man. All the best.